Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Sachleen Singh, and today we're going to take a look about what happened in the Scarlet Weekly Chords this weekend. The chords were played on the 15th of February, and we had three players. So it was a round robin between Bo Carson, Bo Turner, and Zachariah Carlson. So for the first game, I'm bringing to you the Battle of the Bows. It started with e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, first defense, bishop g5, knight c6, and bishop b5. So here white has tried to systematically pin both the knights, although the pawn is still on e7, so this knight is not technically pinned, whereas this knight is pinned. I'm sorry, wrong arrows. Anyway, so this knight is definitely pinned. Here, black played h6 again, just trying to show away the bishop and also asking the question, where do you want to put the bishop? But white made a peculiar choice by taking on f6. Bishop takes f6, and d5 was played. It almost looks like black has blundered a piece, but a6 comes in clutch. And here, white made a second peculiar choice of exchanging the second bishop, giving black the absolute win of bishops on the board. Bishop takes e6, b takes e6, d takes e6. Now it looks like white has won a pawn, but the pawn on c6 is really weak, and with the b5 square unavailable right now, this pawn is going to fall shortly. Yeah, this pawn is going to fall shortly. Anyway, so rook b8, again the idea is rook b6 and just take on c6, e5. Also b2 is hanging, so you've got to defend against both threats. e5 here, and the idea for white is simple, that if you take with the bishop, I take back with the knight, and once you take back, I take on d8 and I castle queenside. Or if you take directly with the pawn, even then takes and castle queenside with check, and defending the b2 pawn in the process of it. Anyway, so bishop g7 was played, knight a4, castle kingside, c3, and then d takes e5, castle kingside, and queen d6. So black is basically saying, yes, I'll trade queens, and yes, you're probably a pawn up, but I'll get my pawn structure back. So rook e1 was played, bishop g4 pinning, h3, and here black found this idea that he's okay with playing down a pawn, but is okay with bringing back the hold on, is black down a pawn? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh yeah, he's not down a pawn. Okay, so he just I missed something somewhere. D takes e5. Okay, so e5 was pushed. Okay, I missed it. So yeah, now black was down a pawn before, but black is not down a pawn right now. And here, the idea for black is that, okay, we're trading queens, but I'm okay with that, because I will give you a bad pawn structure, and then after this, black seems to be happy, but the problem is that this e5 pawn basically cannot move right now, and if it moves, the black bishop is still biting into granite, as b2 and c3 are really tough, and there's not a lot of scope for that bishop to do anything. So not good idea in terms of pawn structure, but if the bishop and the knight come off, probably amazing for black. But otherwise, it seems a little difficult for black to do anything if the pawns remain on b2 and c3, which very quickly they were not. And this causes another problem, because now once the e5 pawn moves, the pawn on c3 comes under attack, and even if it doesn't come under attack, let's say you play c4, the black bishop has absolute free reign on the diagonal. So rook d6 was played, and the same idea again, that if you take, I get my pawn structure back. And here f4 was played. So the idea is that if you take, I get the c7 pawn, or you have to play it really passively. And the engine actually approves of it. The engine says you should take on e4, and then you go rook e7, rook c8. And the idea is that at some point I'm going to play bishop e5, and then I'm going to just chase the rook away with king f7, king f8, king g8, king f8, king e8, and then try to exchange. Probably not by this, because again c7 hangs, but somewhere or the other, and this rook seems a little trapped. So very, very interesting position again. But anyway, so f5 was played here. F takes c5, bishop takes c5, c4, rook e8. And here it looks like the bishop, like black actually walked into a pin. And you could attack it with f4. But bishop d4 comes, and the pin is alleviated. Anyway, so here after rook e8, king g2 was played. And then king f7, king f3, bishop f6, rook takes e8, king takes e8. And this, again, now becomes a little difficult for white to handle. Bishops do usually better when they're pawns on both sides of the board, and knights usually do better when they're pawns only on one side of the board. So if it was all red, I think the knight was completely fine because it's close to the pawns. But at this point, too far away. The other thing is that this knight is on the rim, and it only can go to 4 squares. So those are here. And if somehow black manages to put his bishop here, let's do the proper colors. These 2 squares are already taken. The bishop is also taking these 2 squares away. So this knight is almost completely useless and cannot leave this without the assistance of the king. And white clearly realized this. So he went king e3, king e7, king d3, king e6, and played knight c3. But the problem is that even though the knight comes out of all of this, this is a big mistake, because after bishop takes c3, king takes c3, black has this kingside majority and is going to bring his king, shoulder the king off, and run in with his pawns. And one of these is going to come an outside passer. When the white king goes to deal with it, the black king will basically gobble up all these pawns and have a win. Anyway, g5 was played, which is also wrong. Something else had to be played here. d5 was moved so that you keep the pressure on this pawn, and there's no tactics or right to, play one of these. g5 was played, king d4, h5, king e3, in relinquishing the square. Like, this square is not really good for white. And here another idea that the engine finds is f4, and after g4, hg4, hg4, b4. And the idea is that you still have some sort of counterplay, and your king is in the square of the pawn. Anyway, h5, king e3, and black misses again with king e5. And here, time to pause the video and puzzle rush. There's only one move that draws for white. Pause it and try to find it. Well, the move is f4. And after g takes f4, king f3, there's no way for black to make progress and hold this pawn. And if you try, you still have so many waiting moves. Not a4, so not a4, but you have so many other waiting moves that you can use. And then black will have to try to rush towards this side, and it will somehow result in a pawn race. Anyway, but white tried something interesting. White tried b4. After f4, king d3, d5, b5, takes, g4, h takes d4, h takes d4, king a6, g3, f takes g3, f takes g3, king b7, king d6. And suddenly black is way close to queen in. And black here missed a mate in 2, took king takes e6, but here a simple queen a7, forcing would have been mate. But anyway, king takes e6, a7, queen takes a7, king d8, queen b8, king e7, queen b4, and white resigned. So in the battle of bows, Bothorn was able to win this. with some key points again. So pawn structures really important, endgames, and then also how quickly endgames can change is a very interesting thing here. So I think at this point, somewhere here, it's very equal ish, and then you can still hope to have a game out here, but with one mistake it goes away, and then with another mistake black throws it away and it's a draw again. But again, white just couldn't find it and played the wrong move and again throws it. So these are like three mistakes, blunders back to back, changing the bar completely. Let's go to the next game. The next game was played between Zachary Carlson and Bo Carson, with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, bishop d2, knight c6, e3, bishop takes e3, bishop takes e3. Names are Indian. Castle kingside, bishop d3. And here actually, instead of castle, here now, d5 is also been after castles. Instead of bishop d3, d5 has also been touted as one of the moves that can cause problems to the black knight and taking away squares. Anyway, bishop d3 was played, d6, knight f3, and here rook e8 was played, castle kingside, e5. So with all these Nimzanian type setups, you really want to punish white for not castling this early, and white still requires 3 moves here. But black's slow play basically allows white to get there, and now white's really happy with both the bishops developed, the knights out, everything's done. The only thing is left to play something like queen c2, queen d2, and connected rooks. Castle kingside e5, and here this is a mistake, and white spots it after d takes e5, d takes e5. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, rook takes e5. It looks like white has just lost a piece, but here comes the banger, bishop takes h7, this attack, winning the queen, rook e8, queen d3, king g8, rook a d1, bishop e6, b3, king f8, e4, king e7, e5, knight d7, queen g3, g6, queen h4, king f8. And after the queen's lost, and this is another fork that white found, and here black resigned. But why this game is so smooth and so important and so easy for white to win was basically because in such setups, again, black has to start posing problems, and which black didn't, and that was one of the reasons. Again, and I think knight c6 is also a very weird move to be played. But again, once all these moves on the queen side have been made, you really have to punish white for taking so much time to castle, which black didn't. And after like this d6, rook e8, the passive moves, and white just gets, but castles, white's cruising, white's simply happy, and black's cramped. So there's a couple of things again. So there's this whole space that white has, whereas like black is really cramped. This bishop's not developed yet, and there's a lot that white has going on for them, with like potentially rooks coming to the open files really quickly, and black is just behind. So that caused black to play more like trying to break open, and that caused the mistake. So the causes of mistakes are really important to notice, and this comes from just a purely interesting and nice opening from white. Let's go to the next game, another topsy-turvy game actually. This is between Bo Turner and Zachariah Carlson. Knight f3, g6, g3, bishop g7, d4, e6, bishop g2, knight e7, castles, and c4. So now this is turned into English. d5, cd5, ed5, knight c3, bishop e6. And here knight g5 was played, and which also very interestingly, here knight bc6 was played, which I found very odd, because after knight takes e6, f takes e6, the problem is that this e6 pawn is not only backward, it's going to be attacked by through so many places, like maybe here, maybe this. And this e6 pawn is really weak, and is going to be one of the major threats during the whole situation. Here e4 was played right away, just opening up the center. Knight takes d4, e takes d5, e takes d5. So white has indeed sacrificed a pawn. Bishop g5, and now d5 is under attack. Bishop f6, bishop e3, and knight e6. Although the pawn has now gone away. Excuse me. The pawn has now gone away. The problem is now that the diagonal is open, and black's king is suddenly under a lot of pressure after knight takes d5, bishop takes b2. Bishop takes b2 is a little awkward, because after rook b1 not only gives the b7, but also starts to unleash a lot of attack on the e6 knight. And now the e6 knight is pinned. After queen d7, bishop h3 was played, pinning the knight two ways. And here knight f5 was played. The other move, rook f6, doesn't work, because I think knight g4. Yeah. Anyway, knight f5, knight takes f5, g takes f5, and here rook fe1. And the knight is going to be pinned, and black just has to defend religiously to try and defend all of it. And here rook e8 was played, and the point is, what can black play here? So this is where white chose to blunder, but the idea was takes, and you have a bishop against a knight, and since the pawns on both sides of the board, and definitely black has a lot more pawn islands than right. So these are actually really weak pawns, and that's what white wants to play on. Although a more solid approach here after rook a8 was this maneuver, bishop f1, and the idea is that you're going to reroute it here, and there's still going to be pressure on this and keeping pieces alive. And the thing is, you cannot directly deal with this, because there's also this coming in, so it's very difficult for black to respond to both the threats right away, and that would have been very interesting for white to find. But white takes another approach, which is queen takes b7, again saying that, hey, you have more pawn islands, and you have to really defend against all of this. But there is a very clever move that kind of takes away almost everything from it, which is knight g5. And the point is that now, even if you try, I will get the bishop back, and then rook pawn endings are usually drawn. Plus the c pawn, although isolated, is also a passer. So rook takes e8 forced, knight takes h3, king g2, came with check. Now rook takes e8, king takes h3. Makes things way too simple for black to hold on. Otherwise, with a lot of pieces on the board and with a lot of pawn islands, white could have probably ground this out even better. Anyway, so rook c8, rook takes a7, and black has just lost a pawn but has a passer, so white has to now play passively. Rook d1, c2, rook c1, and white's rook is bound to one place. King f7, king g2, king e6, king f3, rook c3, king e2, f4, g takes f4, rook c4. And here I feel like rook c4 is like saying I'm okay diverging away from that. But an f4 is also being a pawn sack, but a really good one, because now white has double isolated and isolated pawn instead of that really nice pawn structure. So infiltrating this one is much easier. But rook c4 instead of that, I think probably bringing the king would have been easier. But rook c4, king d2, rook takes f4, rook takes c2, rook h4, king e2, rook takes h2, a4, rook h5, rook a2, and rook a5. And now the problem is, again, there's no way to make progress after king d3, king d5, f4, h5, rook h2, h4, rook takes h4, rook takes a4, rook h5 check, king e6, king e3, king f6. Black offered a draw and white agreed because, again, it's very difficult to make progress, and black will always try to cut off the king, and then when the king tries to go around, go behind and keep checking. So it's going to be really difficult, but definitely the win was missed here around queen b7. Instead, bishop f1 just brings a really good attack and almost impossible to defend that position. So bishop f1, but also a difficult move to find because it's a backward bishop move. And those were the 3 games with Bo and Zachara getting 1.5 points each. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.